The late autumn wind tugged at Ivy Hart's jacket, threading cold fingers through her chestnut hair as she picked her way over a narrow deer trail. She wasn't supposed to be out this far. In fact, if her best friend Olivia knew she'd wandered off the marked hiking path, she'd have a full-blown panic attack. But Ivy had never been good at staying inside the lines, literal or figurative. The forest here was thick and old. Towering pines lined the trail like silent sentinels, their trunks rising high above the understory, blotting out what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. It was peaceful, in a way Ivy hadn't felt in a long time, which was exactly why she'd come. She needed space, time. A break from her life unraveling thread by thread. First the breakup, then the job layoff, and now this retreat in the middle of nowhere Montana, which was supposed to be healing and transformative. So far, all it had transformed was her tolerance for granola and being cold. She hiked on, checking her phone out of habit. Dead battery, perfect. A shrill sound echoed in the distance, half howl, half scream. It froze the blood in her veins. Coyote? Wolf? She glanced around. The trees looked different now, less familiar. Had the trail curved without her noticing? Ivy turned to retrace her steps, but froze as a shape emerged from the mist ahead. Tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably human. He stepped into view slowly, his bare chest gleaming faintly with sweat despite the chill, his dark jeans soaked to the knees. The man was intense. That was the only word she could think of. Power rolled off him in waves, and his face, sharply cut, jaw clenched. Hair tousled, looked like it belonged on the cover of some wilderness survival magazine. Except this man didn't look like he survived nature, he owned it. You're trespassing," he said, voice a gravelly growl. Ivy blinked, half convinced she was hallucinating from dehydration. "I'm sorry, what? Kansas land is private." "Dangerous. You need to leave." "Okay, rude much?" "I got lost," she said, trying to keep the edge out of her voice. "The trail vanished, my phone's dead, and I don't exactly have a map." The man didn't move. His nostrils flared slightly, and his expression changed, something behind his eyes sharpening with sudden tension. Then he said the weirdest thing she'd ever heard. "No," he muttered, almost to himself. "Not possible. Excuse me?" He took a step back like she'd struck him. "I'm rejecting the bond." "What bond?" "And you're not my Luna. I won't accept this. I reject you." Ivy stared at him like he'd sprouted antlers. "Okay, wow. I don't know what kind of cult crap you're, but you need to go. Now, before someone else finds you. Sight, I don't even know where I am. I need directions, not whatever this is." His jaw clenched, and for a moment, she swore his eyes flickered gold. Not metaphorically, like, actually glowed. "You shouldn't be here," he said again, turning on his heel. Then he was gone. Just like that. One moment standing in front of her, the next swallowed by trees and mist. Ivy stood in stunned silence. The hairs on her arms stood on end, and a chill raced down her spine. Not from the cold, but something more primal, instinctual. That man hadn't just been a hiker, and the way he'd looked at her, it hadn't been human. Ivy didn't remember how she got back. The trees had all looked the same, twisting evergreens clawing toward a dim sky, but her legs had carried her, almost on autopilot, through the underbrush and shadowed forest. She'd scraped her hands, tripped twice, and muttered more curses than she had in a year, but eventually the winding trail reappeared like a mirage. By the time the cabin came into view, dusk had settled like a blanket over the valley, and her breath came out in ragged puffs. "Where the hell have you been?" Olivia flung open the door the second Ivy stepped onto the porch. "Oh, well, you were gone for 4 hours. I was about to call the ranger station. I got turned around," Ivy mumbled, brushing past her and into the warmth of the fire-lit living room. Her hands were trembling. She hoped Olivia didn't notice. "Turned around? You vanished, Ivy. And you're bleeding." Olivia caught her arm, inspecting a shallow cut near her wrist. "Jesus, you need to be more careful." "These woods aren't. And I saw someone," Ivy said, not looking up. "A man." That stopped Olivia cold. "What?" "In the woods. He was just there, like he came out of nowhere. Was he? Weird? Ivy turned sharply. Yes. Why? Olivia hesitated, eyes shifting toward the window. This place, it's quiet, yeah? But the town down the mountain? It has stories about the hills, the woods. There's talk of strange people. Define strange. Like feral, secretive. Locals call them the Black Ridge clan. Supposedly, they live deep in the mountains and don't take kindly to strangers. Ivy exhaled, the memory of that man's golden eyes flashing behind her lids. He wasn't feral. He was controlled, angry, and he said the weirdest thing. Oh, what did he say? T said he rejected me. Ivy paused, lips twisting. He said he rejected a bond. Olivia's brows lifted. Okay, that's creepy. Sounds like some cult. That's what I thought. He looked at me like I was something wrong, like I broke some rule just by being there. They fell into silence, the fire crackling in the hearth. Ivy wrapped herself in a blanket and let the warmth seep into her bones. But her mind wouldn't settle. She didn't believe in ghost stories, or local legends, or men with glowing eyes who talked about bonds, like it was the Dark Ages. But something in her gut said this wasn't just some backwoods myth. It was real, and she was caught in the middle of it. Later that night, sleep didn't come easily. Ivy tossed and turned in the narrow cabin bed, the weight of that man's voice pressing against her chest like a stone. I reject the bond. What did that even mean? And more importantly, why did it hurt? She didn't know him, had never seen him before. But the way he'd looked at her, the way his whole body had reacted, it wasn't just annoyance or territorial anger. It was panic, and beneath that, fear of her, which didn't make any damn sense. She got up, tugged on a hoodie, and slipped outside. The air was crisp, the stars scattered in a clear sky. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, then a low, mournful howl cut through the silence. It wasn't a dog. Ivy's breath caught. She followed the sound slowly toward the edge of the woods. Her boots crunched against frost-hardened leaves, and every instinct screamed that she shouldn't be out here again. But she needed to know. Meanwhile, at Blackridge territory, Kael Thorne paced the length of his den, muscles tight with tension, breath coming in short bursts. His beta, Rafe, stood at the doorway, arms crossed and brows drawn low. And found her. Kael didn't answer. Rafe's expression darkened, and you felt the bond. Kael slammed his fist into the wall. Wood cracked. She's human. So she can't be Luna. She wouldn't survive the change. She'd be vulnerable, a target. Or, Rafe said quietly, she could be your balance. Kael turned, eyes flashing gold. I won't put the pack at risk for a human. Rafe watched him for a long moment. And Moon doesn't make mistakes, Kael. Say I don't care. I rejected her. It ends there. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were hollow. The bond didn't end. It lingered, pulled, tore, and Ivy's scent still clung to his skin like wildfire and honey. He could reject the bond all he wanted, but the moon had already chosen. The wind had a sharp bite to it the next morning. Ivy stood at the edge of the forest again, staring into the same mist-wrapped trees that had nearly swallowed her yesterday. She wasn't sure what had drawn her here so early. Boots damp with dew, coffee forgotten on the porch, curiosity, frustration, some irrational part of her demanding answers? Or maybe it was him, the man with fire in his eyes and rejection on his lips. Oh, you're going to get eaten alive, Olivia muttered behind her, arms folded tight over her hoodie. And I don't mean by bears. And I need to see if it was real, Ivy said, stepping off the path. The net he was real. He definitely was. You're still rattled. That's the thing. I shouldn't be. He was just a guy in the woods, right? So why can't I stop thinking about him? Olivia didn't answer, and Ivy didn't wait. She slipped past the first trees, heart pounding harder with every step. The farther she went, the more the world changed. The forest seemed darker here, more alive, like the trees were holding their breath, After 20 minutes, she spotted something strange: claw marks, deep, deliberate gouges in the bark of a tree, slashing down in 3 jagged lines. Definitely not a coyote. She crouched beside the base, fingers brushing the old sap. Whatever did this had been strong, bigger than any animal she could think of. Then she heard the growl, low, close. She turned slowly. A wolf, massive, jet black, with amber eyes, stood just 10 feet away. Not like any wolf she'd seen in a documentary. This one was too large, too aware. It didn't move like an animal. It watched her like it understood her. And then it lunged. Ivy stumbled backward, scrambling over roots and loose dirt, but before it reached her, a blur of motion slammed into it from the side. Another wolf, gray-furred, just as big. The two clashed with snarling ferocity, teeth snapping, claws raking, until the black wolf tore away and vanished into the trees. The gray one stood between her and the direction it had gone, breathing hard, watching her. And then, it shifted. Bones cracked, limbs reformed, fur melted away like smoke. And in its place stood a man. Broad-chested, scarred. His chest rose and fell with labored breaths, his eyes still wild. Not the same man from before, but just as otherworldly. "You need to come with me," he said without preamble. Ivy backed up. "I don't think so." "Sinew wandered into our territory. You're lucky you're still breathing. Since I was almost wolf chow. That thing tried to kill me." He glanced into the trees, jaw clenched. "And it was rogue. Not part of our pack. They're crossing the border more often now." So rogue?" He stepped closer. "If you want answers, you'll get them. But not here. And you expect me to just go with you? And you already crossed the line. You're not safe until you're under the Alpha's protection." That name hit like a cold splash of water. Alpha. Him. Ivy hesitated, but survival instincts overrode her better judgment. She nodded once. The heart of Black Ridge was like stepping into another world. Nestled deep within a natural basin, a scattering of log cabins and stone buildings stood hidden by dense forest. Smoke curled from chimneys. People moved about with purpose. Some glanced at Ivy with open curiosity, others with suspicion. "Don't stare at anyone too long." The man, who finally introduced himself as Silas, the pack's tracker, muttered beside her. "They'll assume you're challenging them. And not here to challenge anyone, I promise." He gave a sharp look. "You may not get a choice." They led her to a long lodge at the center of the settlement. The moment she stepped inside, the temperature dropped. He was there, leaning against the far wall, arms crossed over his chest. Kael Thorne looked every bit as intimidating as she remembered. Shirtless again, of course, with a faint sheen of sweat from whatever workout she'd been doing. His hair was damp, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and those golden eyes locked onto her with a heat that made her stomach twist. "Oh, you again," he said coldly. Ivy's jaw clenched. "Sin didn't come looking for you. Sin, why are you here? Sinai was nearly eaten by a damn werewolf. I didn't exactly call an Uber." A flicker of emotion passed through his eyes, quickly masked. "And you were warned." "I was lost," she snapped. "And instead of helping me, you told me you rejected me like I was some kind of cursed object." The room went very still. Kael stepped forward slowly, every inch of him radiating tension. "Because that's what this is. A curse. A mistake." "Why, because I'm human? Because you don't belong in this world? Well, newsflash, Alpha. I didn't ask to be bonded to you. And I sure as hell don't want anything from a man who treats people like garbage." Gasps rippled around the room. A woman near the fireplace stepped forward sharply, eyes blazing. But Silas moved faster, grabbing Ivy's arm and gently but firmly pulling her back. "You don't get it," Kael said, voice low now. "So you can't. This bond makes you a target. My enemies would tear you apart just to watch me bleed. I can take care of myself, and it wouldn't last a week, and I've lasted longer in worse places." Something unreadable flickered in Kael's gaze then. "Pain? Regret? You're not my Luna," he said again, quieter. "You can't be." But Ivy saw the lie in his eyes. He felt it too. even if he didn't want to admit it. Later, Ivy sat in a smaller guest lodge, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, sipping tea brought by a young woman named Naya, who seemed far kinder than the rest of the pack. Silas had told her she couldn't leave the territory until they were sure the rogues weren't lingering nearby. "I don't get it," Ivy muttered, watching the fire crackle. He rejected me. Fine. But why does it still feel like I'm anchored to him? Naya gave her a sympathetic smile. Because the moon chooses. The bond doesn't care what your brain wants, or even your heart. It's deeper than that. I didn't choose this. Clay neither did he. And now we're both stuck? Naya shrugged. Or, you learn to fight together. Ivy snorted. Unlikely. But even as she said it, the words didn't feel quite so certain. Because no matter how much she hated Kael Thorne, some part of her already knew she'd be seeing him again. The next morning dawned cold and silver. Frost glistened on the wooden windowsill of the guest cabin like tiny shards of glass, and Ivy stood staring at the endless trees stretching beyond the window. She hadn't slept. Too many questions, too much adrenaline, and too much him. Even in her dreams, Kael's voice echoed, rough, angry, and cold. I reject you. The words cut deeper than they should have. She barely knew the man. He was a stranger who looked at her like she was a problem, like he wished she didn't exist. And yet, that tether, whatever it was, had wrapped around something inside her. It's just the shock, she told herself. The fear, the danger. It had nothing to do with the way his voice dropped when he was furious. Nothing to do with the fire in his eyes or the scars on his hands. It definitely wasn't the way her skin had flushed when he got too close. Like her body knew something her mind didn't. Right? Before she could spiral any further, there was a knock on the cabin door. She pulled it open to find Naya standing there with a bundle of folded clothes in her arms. Good morning, the younger woman said cheerfully, as if Ivy hadn't verbally sparred with the pack alpha the night before in front of half his people. Morning, Ivy muttered. What's the dress code for being a hostage? Naya snorted. You're not a hostage. You're a protected guest. Feels like a nice way of saying prisoner. Naya didn't argue. Instead, she handed over the bundle. Wear these. You'll want something warmer. Kael's requested your presence at the training fields. Ivy blinked. I'm sorry, he requested? Naya gave her a tight smile. Oh, and he's still the alpha. And technically you're in pack territory. Right, and I'm the human who's apparently causing a metaphysical disturbance. Naya just winked. Oh, try not to throw punches today. Unless it's at a training dummy. The training field was more of a clearing, flattened and packed earth surrounded by trees, with weapon racks on one side, and a small group of wolves in human form sparring in the middle. Ivy's breath caught the second she spotted him. Kael stood at the far end of the field, a black hoodie pulled halfway over his head, his hands wrapped in cloth, already sweat-soaked from what looked like a punishing workout. He was boxing shirtless with another man. Rafe, someone whispered. A brutal flurry of fists and kicks exchanged at blinding speed. Ivy didn't care about werewolves or bonds or mystical fates, but God, the man moved like a weapon. Powerful, controlled, dangerous. And when Kael finally caught Rafe in the ribs and knocked him to the dirt, he turned, and his golden eyes found her. Every muscle in Ivy's body locked. He stalked over slowly, like a storm on legs, and for one wild second, Ivy thought she might run just to make him chase her. Didn't expect you to show, Kael said, folding his arms. His chest rose and fell in slow, deep breaths. I was told I didn't have a choice. Said thought you'd left already. Sorry to disappoint you. The corner of his mouth twitched, more grimace than smile. I figured you'd want some answers, he said finally. So ask. Ivy narrowed her eyes. Fine. Let's start with the obvious. What the hell are you? He didn't flinch. A shifter. A werewolf. Alpha of the Black Ridge Pack. We've lived in these mountains for over a century. Right. And you can turn into wolves and apparently fight each other like a Marvel movie. And we shift. Our strength increases during the moon cycle. And yes, we fight. It's how we train and protect our territory. And this whole bond thing? Kael's jaw ticked. Some shifters are fated, chosen by the moon. The bond is primal. It connects two people, usually one alpha, one Luna. Makes the pack stronger, unifies the leadership. And if one of them's human? Then it's a mistake. Ivy crossed her arms. So your first instinct is to reject me. My first instinct was to protect my pack. And it's not what it felt like. Kael's gaze darkened. You think I wanted this? I think you're so terrified of needing someone that you'd rather push them away before they get the chance to leave. The words hung between them like a blade. Kael stared at her, lips parted as if she'd hit something raw. Go home, Ivy, he said finally, voice hoarse. One before this gets worse. And can't. Not until your people say it's safe. His expression shuddered again. Then stay out of the way. He turned and walked off before she could respond, muscles tense, spine straight. And Ivy? She watched him walk away and hated herself for wishing he'd stayed. Later that evening, Ivy found herself sitting near the main lodge with Naya, who had dragged her into helping prep food for some kind of full moon gathering. Apparently, tonight was important. Something about pack energy being high, everyone needing to be grounded. The rogues come out more on full moons, Naya said, chopping roots with ease. Some say it drives them mad. Ivy handed her a bowl of washed herbs. Why? What makes a shifter go rogue? Naya hesitated. Pain, loss, betrayal. Some bonds break, others never form. A rogue's wolf goes feral without connection. Ivy went still. Is that what Kael's afraid of? Going rogue? Naya gave her a long look. Kael already was rogue. For nearly a year. Ivy's breath caught. And left the pack after his brother died, Naya went on. And wouldn't speak, wouldn't shift, wouldn't lead. It nearly destroyed Blackridge. And he came back? Naya nodded. When the old alpha, his father, passed, Kael took the mantle because no one else could. But he came back, different, harder, colder. Like part of him stayed out there. Ivy didn't respond. She was starting to understand now. Kael hadn't rejected her because she was human. He'd rejected her because he was afraid she'd be another loss, another weakness, another ghost. The night of the full moon arrived like a rising tide, slow, inevitable, and laced with electricity. Even Ivy, who had no supernatural bone in her body, could feel the shift in the air. It was thicker, charged, humming with tension, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Is it always like this? She asked Naya as they walked toward the large bonfire pit at the heart of the pack's territory. Naya, dressed in dark layered leathers and a shawl pinned with what looked like wolf teeth, smiled faintly. You feel it too? And I feel like I've had 3 shots of espresso and someone's watching me from the trees. Then yes, you feel it. That's the moon stirring the bond lines. It wakes everything up, blood, instinct, even things you didn't know were inside you. Ivy wrapped her jacket tighter around herself and glanced at the clearing ahead. Torches lined the path like something out of a medieval movie. The fire pit blazed in the center, surrounded by long benches carved with knotwork and claw marks. Shifters gathered in clusters, some sitting, others standing or pacing, all dressed for the cold but alert, like they were waiting for a command. And then Kael arrived. The crowd shifted as if sensing him before he even stepped into the firelight. Ivy's heart tripped, annoyed at the reaction, but unable to stop it. He wore black again, black hoodie, black pants, black boots, his hair damp from a fresh shower. Jaw clenched, golden eyes glowing faintly beneath his hood. She should have looked away. She didn't. His gaze locked on hers across the fire, and her breath caught. What the hell is happening to me? Naya leaned in, murmuring, Ain, try not to stare at the alpha like you want to fight him or kiss him. Either one will get attention. Ivy snorted under her breath. And noted. Kael stepped forward and raised a hand. The murmurs died. I don't need to tell you what tonight means, he said, voice low and steady, somehow cutting through the wind. The rogues are closer than ever. 2 sightings this week, both near the boundary line. That means we double patrols until dawn. A murmur of agreement rippled. Kael continued, but tonight isn't just about defense, it's about strength. About the moon. The bond between all of us. We fight as one. We live as one. The group responded in chorus, their voices low and unified. When we run as one. Ivy watched, transfixed. These people were warriors, family. Some of them likely hated her presence, but they were bound together in a way that made her heart ache. She hadn't felt part of something in a long time. And Kael, he wasn't just their alpha. He was their anchor, even if he couldn't anchor himself. The gathering moved into a quieter rhythm. Food was brought out, drinks poured, laughter starting to rise. It felt, for a little while, like a normal community. Until the wind shifted. Kael stiffened first. His nostrils flared, then others caught it, heads turning sharply toward the trees. Silas appeared at Kael's side, face grim. "Rogues," he said quietly. "North perimeter. 3 of them." Kael swore under his breath. "Naya, get the civilians under shelter. Now." Ivy felt her chest tighten. "What do you mean, civilians?" Naya grabbed her wrist. "That means you. I'm not leaving. So don't have a choice. If they sent you, Enna let them try." Kael was suddenly in front of her. His hand clamped around her upper arm, not harsh but unyielding. "You, inside. Now." She looked up at him, heart thundering. "You think I'm some fragile thing? Sin, I think you don't understand what's coming. Then show me." Something shifted in his expression. Just a flicker. Vulnerability, maybe. Fear? "For one night," he said, voice tight. "And stay in the Alpha Lodge. Protected. No arguments. Or what?" He leaned in, his voice a growl against her ear. "Or I tie you to a damn chair and post 4 guards outside the door." She stared at him. "You'd really do that?" He met her gaze. "Don't test me, Ivy." And she realized he was afraid. Not of the rogues. Of losing her. Ivy paced the Alpha Lodge for what felt like hours. She could hear the howls outside, far off but not far enough. Naya had brought her tea, a soft blanket, and a dagger with a silver hilt, just in case. She'd said, "Is that supposed to make me feel better? Think of it as Kael being cautious. He doesn't want to risk the bond reacting if something happens to you." "On the bond," Ivy muttered, gripping the dagger tighter. "I didn't ask for any of this." No," Naya had said gently. "But maybe it's what you needed." Now alone, Ivy sat near the massive fireplace, mind spinning. Everything in her life had been quiet, simple, predictable. Now? She was in a secret mountain territory surrounded by actual werewolves, targeted by feral ones, and apparently fated to a man who hated the idea of needing anyone. And worse, she didn't hate the idea of him. The door burst open. Kael stormed in, blood spattered on his knuckles, breathing heavy. Ivy shot to her feet. "Oh, what happened? When they're gone?" He scrubbed a hand over his jaw. "A one escaped. The other 2 are dead." She walked up to him before she could stop herself. "Are you hurt?" He looked down at her, silent. And then he said, softly, "Why do you care?" "Because I don't like seeing people bleed. And even people who reject you, especially them." That almost got a smile out of him. Almost. But instead he said, "Oh, you should leave, as soon as it's safe. You keep saying that. You ever consider I might not want to?" Kael's expression changed, tightened. "Don't say things you don't mean." "And I'm not." He stared at her. The silence stretched. Then quietly he said, "So you throw off my control. Good." And she stepped closer. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Their faces inches apart, the bond thrummed between them like a pulse. But before either of them could close the distance, Kael whispered, "If I kiss you, I won't let you go." And Ivy said, Maybe I don't want you to." Kael's eyes were molten gold in the firelight. His chest still heaved from the fight outside, sweat mingling with streaks of blood along his collarbone. The predator in him was wound tight, coiled like a spring beneath his skin. But right now, Ivy didn't see a monster. She saw a man holding himself together with sheer will. A man haunted by loss, torn by instincts he refused to acknowledge. And maybe that's why she didn't pull back, didn't run, didn't stop when her hand rose and lightly touched the bruised edge of his jaw. Kael flinched at the contact but didn't pull away. His voice, when it came, was low and almost broken. "You don't know what this will do to you, and I don't care. When you should." "And tired of being told what I should feel," Ivy whispered. "What I should want." Kael's breath shuddered out of him. The space between them disappeared. His hand came up, rough and warm, wrapping around the side of her neck, fingers splayed against her pulse. Her breath caught, and he tilted his head forward like a man approaching a cliff's edge, like he didn't know whether he was about to jump or be pushed. And then he kissed her. No hesitation, no warning. His mouth crashed onto hers like a thunderstorm, wild and consuming and fierce. Ivy gasped, and he took that as invitation, his tongue sweeping deep into her mouth, claiming her like he'd been starving for her since the moment they met. She gripped the front of his hoodie, fingers twisting into the fabric as if she could anchor herself to him. His other hand slid around her waist, pulling her flush against him, all muscle and heat and tension. The world fell away. Everything was him, the way he tasted, the scent of pine and smoke on his skin, the way he kissed, like it was the first and last time he'd ever allow himself to feel. Kael groaned low in his throat when she kissed him back with just as much desperation. She bit lightly on his bottom lip, and the noise he made sent a bolt of heat straight through her. They stumbled back against the wall near the fireplace, her spine pressing into the wood as he devoured her, lifting her just enough that her feet barely touched the ground. His mouth broke from hers for a split second, long enough to rest his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake," he rasped, voice raw. "And don't stop," she breathed, and he didn't. His mouth found hers again, slower this time, deeper. His lips moved like he was memorizing her, learning her taste, the rhythm of her breath. His hand slid under the hem of her shirt, palm splaying against the warm skin of her waist. She arched into his touch without thinking. It should have been cold, wrong, dangerous. Instead, it felt like coming home. Somewhere outside, a howl broke the quiet. Not a pack howl. A rogue's cry, long and ragged and wild. Kael froze. Ivy felt the instant shift in him, tension locking his spine, his hand stilling under her shirt. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling away, resting his hand flat against the wall beside her head. He didn't look at her, eyes closed like he was trying to rein in a storm. "What is it?" she asked, breathless. "That wasn't the last of them. And you said they were gone." Said they were gone. Thought they were. He pushed away from the wall, already moving toward the weapons rack near the lodge's main door. But one stayed behind. "I can feel it." Ivy followed him, still dazed. "You feel it?" He didn't look at her as he strapped a short blade to his belt. "It's part of being alpha. I can sense intrusions, threats, especially on a full moon." "Sir, you're leaving?" "Silas will meet me at the North Ridge." Her chest twisted. "Kael." He turned then, finally looked at her. And that was worse than any blade, because she saw it, clear and aching in his eyes. "Regret. And you shouldn't have let me kiss you," he said hoarsely. Her jaw clenched. "Foe, you kissed me first." "And should have stopped myself." "Why?" "Because now I don't know if I can again." The lodge door slammed behind him before she could find the words to answer. Later that night, Ivy sat alone in the dark, the fire nothing but dying embers now. Her lips still tingled, her skin still burned where he'd touched her. But more than that, something deeper had stirred. Not just desire, bond, that unrelenting pull inside her, like her soul had tasted something it couldn't forget. She should have felt guilty, or confused, or scared. But all she felt was angry, because the man who held her like a lifeline, who kissed her like she was salvation, was still running. And sooner or later, she'd stop waiting for him to come back. The forest was eerily quiet the morning after the kiss. Too quiet. Ivy stood at the edge of the Alpha Lodge porch, arms crossed tight over her chest, the same hoodie from last night still wrapped around her. Kael hadn't returned. The last rogue's howl had faded hours ago, but her heart hadn't stopped pounding since. Naya approached from the main path, eyes scanning the tree line before settling on Ivy. "Oh, he's still out there," she said softly, reading the question in Ivy's eyes. Rafe tracked blood but no body. They're following the trail north. Why didn't they wake the whole pack? Naya's jaw tensed. Because Kael didn't want panic. And he didn't want you involved. Ivy's frustration flared. Why? Because I'm human? Oh no, Naya said, stepping closer. And because the bond is already affecting him. Ivy went still. What do you mean? Naya exhaled. The more an alpha resists a bond, the more it frays him. His wolf is growing unstable. He's trying to stay in control, but the rejection is tearing at both of you. Ivy blinked. Both? So you haven't felt it yet? Naya asked gently. The anger, the confusion, the way you feel more. Raw? Ivy swallowed hard. Yes. She had felt it. Ever since that first moment, Kael had looked at her like he wanted to break something. Ever since that kiss. Her skin had been buzzing, her chest tight, like something inside her was clawing to the surface. I don't want to be part of his unraveling, Ivy whispered, and you might be the only thing keeping him from falling apart. It was just past noon when the first scream echoed across the clearing. Not a rogue's cry, a child's. Ivy was already sprinting down the dirt path before anyone could stop her, her instincts flaring hard and fast. She rounded the corner behind the mess hall and froze. A rogue was inside the territory, not feral and foaming like the stories, but lean, fast, and smiling. His teeth were too white, his nails too long. Blood crusted along the side of his jaw. He had a girl no older than 8 clutched in one clawed hand, her feet dangling above the ground, eyes wide with terror. Several pack members stood frozen, uncertain whether to shift or charge. The rogue growled, dragging his claws along the child's cheek, not enough to break skin, yet. I want the alpha, he hissed. Saint, call him. Now. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Ivy said, stepping forward. The rogue's head snapped in her direction. His nose flared. He grinned wider. Ah, you're the little prize, aren't you? Ivy's stomach turned. I'm the one who's going to put you on the ground if you don't let her go. He snorted. You've got no claws, sweetheart. You're human. Ivy didn't flinch. I've got rage. That's enough. Naya whispered behind her. What are you doing? Ivy didn't answer. Her blood was roaring. Her vision was sharp. Something had snapped open inside her. Last chance, she said, voice calm. I'll let her go. The rogue licked his lips and started to raise his claws. Ivy moved. She threw the dagger Naya had given her days ago, blade flashing in the sunlight. It embedded straight in the rogue's shoulder. He roared in shock, dropping the child, who scrambled into Naya's arms. Then Ivy charged. He wasn't expecting it. Not from her. She ducked under his swing, grabbed a fallen branch thick with bark, and jammed it up under his chin with all the force she had. The crack was audible. The rogue dropped. Dead or unconscious, she didn't care. Panting, Ivy stood over his crumpled form, her hands shaking, blood in her mouth from biting her own lip during the strike. Silas skidded into the clearing a second later, flanked by 2 enforcers. His eyes widened when he saw the body, then Ivy, then the child in Naya's arms. Where the hell was the perimeter patrol? Silas snapped. I don't know, Naya breathed. But Ivy saved her, Silas finished, voice quiet. Ivy said nothing, but in her chest something pulsed. Power, not supernatural, just hers. Kael returned that night. Covered in dirt and blood, his jacket shredded, expression wild. Silas met him halfway up the hill. And there was a breach, the beta said flatly. And one rogue got past us. Kael stilled. Where? Main territory, behind the mess hall. Took a child hostage. Kael's fists clenched. Who stopped him? Silas hesitated. Ivy. Kael's face shifted, disbelief first, then fear, then something unreadable. Where is she? Silas jerked his chin toward the Alpha Lodge. Kael walked. Fast. Ivy was in the lodge kitchen, hands still stained with dried blood, sleeves pushed to her elbows when the door slammed open. Kael stormed in, eyes glowing. She didn't turn. I didn't expect you back so soon. You went after a rogue. Since I wasn't exactly planning it. She could have been killed. She turned now, slowly. So could that little girl. Kael strode up to her, breath ragged. You're not trained. You're not part of this pack. You're not yours to order around? He stopped short, and Ivy saw it. The real reason for his fury wasn't the danger. It was the bond. He'd felt it. She stepped toward him. What does it feel like, Kael, when I'm in danger? Does it burn? His eyes darkened. Yes, and done pretending I don't feel it too. Kael reached out, slowly this time, his hand brushing her jaw. You terrify me, he whispered. You make me feel like I could want again, need again. And if I need you, you'll fall, she finished for him. He didn't answer, because he already was. By morning, Ivy had become a legend. Whispers followed her through every corridor of the territory. Pack members who had barely looked at her before now parted like water in her path. Some with admiration, others with suspicion, a few with hostility. She's not even a wolf, one muttered behind her back. She saved the Alpha's niece, another snapped. She's the reason he's unraveling, a third hissed. Ivy kept her head high, kept walking. She had no claws, no fangs, no shifting form. But she had made her choice the moment she hurled that dagger, and now the pack knew it. Naya was waiting in the training circle, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. "And you've gone from outsider to warrior goddess in 12 hours, she said. Ivy managed a small smile. Didn't plan that, and no one plans the moment they change everything. You just show up. Before Ivy could respond, Silas approached at a brisk pace, his face unreadable. Oh, there's a visitor, he said. Naya frowned. For not expecting anyone. Send you weren't, Silas corrected. But he was. Ivy's stomach turned. Who? Silas looked straight at her. Alpha Dorian of the Eastern Ridge. And he asked for you by name. Dorian arrived on horseback, like a warlord from another century. His wolf-black coat billowed behind him, and his expression was carved from cold marble. Tall, lean, with a quiet intensity that made the pack members bow their heads as he passed, not from submission, but respect. Kael waited for him near the fire pit, arms crossed, jaw tight. They didn't embrace, didn't speak right away, just stood there, two alphas assessing, measuring, preparing for a fight without claws. And you weren't invited, Kael said finally. Didn't need an invitation. The rogue activity reached my borders. Thought it was time we talked. Dorian's gaze shifted, past Kael, past Silas, and landed squarely on Ivy. She didn't flinch. Dorian's mouth curved into something dangerously close to a smile. You must be Ivy. Kael moved before she could speak, placing himself half in front of her. Protective, possessive. Dorian raised an eyebrow. So it's true. You rejected the bond, and yet here she is, still standing beside you. Ivy is under my protection, Kael said coldly. Under your thumb, you mean. The tension crackled. Ivy stepped forward, past Kael, past the weight of everyone's stare. I can speak for myself, she said, calm and clear. Dorian's eyes glinted. Oh, that's why I came. They sat inside the Alpha Lodge, the heavy silence of politics draped over the furniture like smoke. Kael stood at the window, arms locked behind his back, watching, always watching. Ivy sat opposite Dorian at the long oak table. He studied her with open interest. No lust, no mockery, just calculation. I've seen alphas fall apart over less, he said, and I've seen Lunas rise from women no one ever thought capable. You stood your ground against a rogue. You defended a child not even yours. And I did what anyone would have done. Oh no, Dorian said smoothly. You did what a Luna would have done. Kael tensed. Dorian leaned forward. "Unless you could come to Eastern Ridge. We don't judge bloodlines there. Human, shifter, mage, it doesn't matter if you're strong. If you can lead." Ivy blinked. "You want me to? Bailey Luna of my pack." The air sucked out of the room. I don't need a mate," Dorian added. "I need someone with fire, with instinct. My pack already knows your name. You're not Kael's shadow. You're your own weapon." Ivy's heart hammered, and Kael still hadn't said a word. When Dorian left, he gave Ivy a carved token, obsidian with a crescent moon etched into the center. "If you ever want more than silence and scars," he said softly, "come east." And then he rode off, his wolves at his back. The moment the dust settled, Ivy turned to Kael. "I expected you to argue. Said I expected you to say no. And say haven't decided yet." Kael's jaw tightened. You're mine." "Sen you rejected the bond. And I had to." "Why?" He turned away. "That's not an answer." "Ivy." She stepped in front of him, grabbing his wrist. "I'll no more running. If you want me to stay, say it. Because I'm done waiting for a man too afraid of his own heart to fight for me." His eyes burned into hers, wild, tormented, and still silent. So she dropped his hand and walked away. The Eastern Ridge wasn't what Ivy expected. The land rose in sweeping arcs, silver rivers cutting through mossy woodlands. The pack compound wasn't a fortress like Kael's, but an open sprawl of structures built into nature, stone and cedar, firelight glowing from every window like a heartbeat. Ivy arrived at dusk. Dorian met her himself at the gate. "And you didn't have to come in person," she said. "I did if I wanted to see whether you'd really show." She looked up at the looming trees and the dark sky beyond. "I haven't decided anything." "Of course not," Dorian replied. "But you're here. And that's the first step." Eastern Ridge was unlike anything Ivy had seen. There were no sharp hierarchies, no biting dominance. The wolves moved with purpose, not fear. They bowed to Dorian, not because they were compelled, but because they respected him. And they looked at her. Not as a human, not as a mistake, but as a question worth answering. In the first hour, she was introduced to warriors, healers, and even a Luna council. 3 women, none of whom were mates to the Alpha, but who advised him on matters of diplomacy, protection, and cultural law. They invited Ivy to sit with them that night. They asked about her thoughts on rogue incursions, Luna responsibilities, and the role of humans within shifter borders. She didn't have answers to all of it, but she had ideas. And for the first time, someone was listening. Back in Ironclaw territory, Kael was losing control. It began with the nightmares, then the blackouts, then the moment he almost struck Silas during training and had no memory of doing it. You need to shift," Silas said, cornering him near the waterfall after Kael snapped at a scout. "I can't," Kael growled. "My wolf won't come forward. Pez, you've caged him. You've caged yourself." Kael looked hollow, empty. Even the gold in his irises had dulled. "She's gone," he whispered. Send her away. I thought it was safer." Silas grabbed his shoulder. "And you thought it would hurt less. Admit it." Kael said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. 3 days into Ivy's stay at Eastern Ridge, the rogues attacked. Not scouts, not lone wolves, a pack, organized, brutal, and fast. They struck at midnight, taking down 2 sentries and setting fire to the south wall of the healer's compound. Ivy was awake instantly, the smoke dragging her from a restless sleep. She didn't wait for orders, she ran. Outside, the night was chaos, screams, snarls, flames rising into the treetops. Warriors shifted mid-air, colliding with invaders in the mud. Ivy grabbed the nearest blade she could find and joined the fray. Dorian saw her. He didn't stop her. He nodded, and then he dove into the fight himself, shifting into a massive silver-gray wolf and launching into the heart of the battle. Ivy fought with fury. Not because she had claws, because she had rage. She stabbed a rogue who was dragging a girl by her ankle, spinning and slamming the hilt of her blade into another's jaw. Blood sprayed across her hoodie. and something primal in her screamed to keep going. But it wasn't enough. They were losing ground. The rogues were circling the pack house when a howl tore across the forest. It was not from Eastern Ridge, it was deeper, darker, alpha-born. Then they appeared, Kael, Naya. A dozen of Ironclaw's best warriors, descending the northern ridge like a vengeance storm. Kael shifted mid-run, his wolf larger than any Ivy had ever seen, dark smoke and fury, his eyes glowing molten gold as he launched into the chaos. Rogues scattered. Within minutes the tide turned. The battlefield fell quiet, strewn with blood and bodies. The fires were dying, and Kael, in human form again, stood in the center of it all, shirtless, cut and bruised, his eyes locked on Ivy. She didn't run to him. She stood her ground. "I thought you didn't want me," she said. "And lied," he said hoarsely. "Silence." "I thought pushing you away would protect you," Kael continued, voice shaking. "I thought you'd be safer without me. But all I did was destroy both of us." Ivy swallowed. You didn't come for me. You came for them." "Sinai came because I felt you fall," he said. "Your pain, your rage, you called to me, Ivy. My wolf heard you." Her lip trembled. You rejected me. I still feel you in every breath I take," he said. "Every howl, every heartbeat. And it's killing me." She didn't know whether to hit him or kiss him. So she stood there, blood-stained and wild-eyed, heart breaking and building at the same time. "You have to fight for me, Kael," she whispered. "And not just when I'm dying, but when I'm living, when I'm leading, when I'm everything you're afraid to let me be." "And not afraid anymore," he said. Then he stepped closer, and sank to his knees in the bloody dirt. "Am yours," Kael said, "on if you'll still have me." They gave her the seat at the head of the table, not beside Dorian, not behind Kael, at the head. The great council chamber of Eastern Ridge was shaped like a crescent, open to the forest beyond. The walls were carved with the history of the pack, images of wolves and fire, symbols of strength and survival. Ivy sat in the Luna chair, usually reserved for Dorian's second or an elder, but this time, they had offered it to her, not as a test, but as recognition. Kael stood behind her right shoulder, silent, still bruised, still raw, but here. Dorian stood on the left, arms crossed, face unreadable. The room held the three councils, Eastern Ridge, Ironclaw, and neutral envoys from the Highlands, all convened because of her, because of the rogues, because of what she represented. "The rogue attacks are coordinated, said Dorian. "They're not wild anymore. Someone's organizing them." Naya leaned forward. "And think a pack is backing them? Backing them?" "I think someone's building one," Dorian replied. "And they're targeting territories with fractured leadership, packs that have rejected their lunas, packs with broken alpha lines." A beat passed, and every eye shifted to Kael, his jaw clenched. "Ironclaw is not fractured," he said, "and you rejected your mate," a Highland envoy said bluntly. "That creates imbalance." Kael didn't deny it. He looked at Ivy instead, and for the first time he saw her, not just as his bond, not as a weakness, but as a leader. "And I was wrong," he said quietly. The room went still. "And I rejected Ivy because I thought it would save her, but I see now that it broke everything else, my wolf, my pack, myself. She isn't just my Luna. She is stronger than any of us knew. She united 2 packs tonight. She led in a way I never could have asked her to." Ivy's breath caught, Kael continued. "Which is why I will not ask her to return with me. Not unless she chooses it." Dorian turned to her. "And what do you choose, Ivy?" The room held its breath. She rose from the Luna chair. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. "I didn't ask to be chosen. I didn't grow up dreaming of wolves and thrones. I came into your world because fate threw me at Kael's feet and said, 'Sink or rise.'" She looked around the table. I rose. No one interrupted. "I'm not a placeholder. I'm not a title. I'm not an accident. I fought rogues, bled beside your warriors, and stood my ground when both of your alphas hesitated. Kael lowered his head. Dorian narrowed his eyes, but not in anger. Admiration. And I will not be handed power like a favor. I will take it where it is earned. I will follow no man who fears my strength, and I will not leave behind what I've begun here unless I believe it's the right path forward, for everyone. Then she stepped between them, between Kael and Dorian, and said, But I'm not a prize to be passed between two powerful men. Kael stepped forward slowly. You're not. You never were. His hand found hers, not to take it, but to offer it. If you return with me, Ivy, it will be as Luna in truth, equal, standing beside me before the pack, before the council, before the moon. I'll accept your leadership, I'll accept your fire, and I'll never ask you to be small again. Ivy stared at him, then she turned to Dorian, and he nodded. She was never mine to claim, Dorian said softly, but she changed us too. Ivy's throat tightened, and her decision was made. They returned to Ironclaw at sunrise. The pack gathered in silence as Ivy stepped into the stone circle, the sacred heart of their territory. She wore no crown, no silk, only her scars and her truth. Kael shifted beside her, his wolf silent now, not out of fear but respect. He dropped to one knee in front of her, then Naya, then Silas, then every warrior, every elder, every pup, not because she demanded it, because she had earned it. The moon rose slowly behind them as Ivy stepped into the center of the circle and raised her voice. My name is Ivy. I was born without a pack, without claws, without prophecy. But I stand here because I refuse to be forgotten. She paused. Tonight, I accept my place, not as a mate alone, not as a symbol, but as your Luna. And this time no one walks alone. The howls that followed shook the mountains. The ceremony had ended, but Ivy remained at the heart of the stone circle long after the howls faded. The air was thick with magic and moonlight, charged by the collective energy of the pack. It didn't hum. It thrummed, like a second pulse under her skin. And for the first time in weeks, Ivy felt like she wasn't carrying her strength alone. Kael stood just outside the circle, watching her with unreadable eyes. He didn't come to her. He waited. She liked that about him now. The waiting, the stillness. He wasn't pushing her anymore, not shoving his guilt or his want or his wolf at her like a demand. He was just there, willing. She stepped toward him. He didn't move, but his eyes darkened, slowly, steadily, burning gold as the bond pulsed between them. You once said I was safer without you, she said softly, and I lied. I'm not afraid anymore, and neither am I. The words hung between them, trembling with everything they hadn't said. And then she reached for him, not like someone falling, but like someone choosing. Kael didn't ask questions. He just kissed her. And the world came undone. It wasn't sweet. Not the kind of kiss Ivy had imagined as a girl, staring at fairy tale covers and whispering wishes into her pillow. It was wild, a collision of heat and history, hands and hunger. Kael's mouth claimed hers like a promise long withheld, tongue sliding deep, arms caging her close like he was afraid she'd vanish again. Ivy kissed him back like she'd waited a lifetime, because she had. They broke only long enough for breath, and then his hand was at the back of her neck, guiding her toward the tree line, away from the circle and toward the small stone shelter built for the Luna's rest after ceremonial rites. But Ivy didn't want rest. She wanted everything, and so did he. Inside the Luna's quarters, moonlight spilled across the bed, bare furs and woven blankets, soft and spare. But Kael didn't take her there first. He pressed her against the wall, kissed down her throat, unfastened the leather ties of her ceremonial jacket like he couldn't bear the distance anymore. I can feel every part of you, he whispered against her skin, breath hot. Even when you're across a battlefield. You feel me now? She whispered back, voice unsteady. His hand slid down her back, over her hips. Yes, then he dropped to his knees, and Ivy stopped breathing. He kissed her stomach, her hips, the inside of her thigh. I thought I'd ruined this, Kael murmured, voice rough. Ruined us. And you didn't. Insai almost did. She pulled him back up, meeting him eye to eye. Then stop punishing yourself, just love me. Kael's mouth crashed against hers again, and they fell back onto the bed, tangled, burning, stripped bare in seconds. His body was all hard muscle and scars and heat, but his hands were reverent, shaking, almost in awe. I don't want to hurt you, he said, and you won't. His gaze locked on hers. And finally, he pushed inside. It was slow at first, torturous, every inch of him stretching her open, reigniting the thread between them that had never fully snapped. The bond surged, not painful, not burning, binding. He moved deeper, groaning her name like a prayer and pressing his forehead to hers. Ivy wrapped her legs around his hips, nails digging into his shoulders, eyes locked on the man who had once been her greatest heartbreak. Now he was her home. Their rhythm built like a storm, wave after wave, mouth to skin, breath to breath. Kael worshipped every part of her, her neck, her breasts, the place between her thighs that made her arch and cry out and shatter. And when she did, when she broke, she took him with her. Kael came undone inside her, breath ragged, voice caught in her name as the bond snapped tight between them like thunder through the marrow of the earth. Ivy had never felt more whole. They lay tangled in silence, sweat damp and glowing in the aftershock. Kael stroked her hip with slow, grounding fingers. Never stopped loving you, he whispered. I know. She rolled onto her side, facing him. But from now on, she added, voice soft but fierce, you love me out loud. No more hiding, no more chains. His eyes burned, and swear it. Outside the pack was still howling, but inside the Luna's quarters, only two hearts mattered now, no longer at war. One bond, one truth, one flame. Morning broke red. The kind of red that whispered of blood. Ivy woke first, curled in the curve of Kael's arm, the sheets tangled and still warm from the heat they'd shared. His breathing was slow, steady, deep in sleep for the first time in what felt like days. She didn't move right away. Instead, she watched the way the morning light slid over his face, softening the sharp lines that had hardened since his rejection. His lashes cast shadows on his cheeks. He looked younger in sleep, vulnerable. But Ivy wasn't the girl she'd been either. She was Luna now, and there was no time to rest. She was dressing in the Luna robes, simple but fitted, a dark green that blended with the pines outside, when a knock came at the door. Not a soft, deferential knock, a summons. Ivy opened it to find Naya waiting. Ser's been a challenge, Naya said without preamble. Ivy frowned. A physical one? No. Worse, a public one. The word settled like frost. From who? Naya's jaw clenched. Elder Varen. He's called a conclave meeting. He wants to test your claim. My claim as Luna? Wente's worthy, period. Ivy took a breath. Then let him. Ironclaw's conclave hall was ancient, built into the base of the mountain, its ceiling open to the sky, where only moonlight and judgment were allowed to fall. The elders gathered quickly, 12 in all. Old wolves, each with a seat carved with their family crest. They eyed Ivy with quiet skepticism as she stepped into the center of the circle. Kael wasn't allowed inside. Not during a challenge. This was her fight. Elder Varen stood, his long gray hair braided back, robes stiff with ceremonial bone stitch. We welcome the claimed Luna of Ironclaw, he began. But welcome is not the same as acceptance. Ivy nodded, calm. Challenge me, then. Murmurs spread like wind. Varen's eyes narrowed. And do you understand what that means? And not just Kael's mate, she said. I'm not just here because the moon chose me. I'm here because I've earned it. And if I have to prove that in blood or bone or breath, I will. A quiet descended. Then Varen lifted his staff. Then you will be tested. Ivy was led to the central platform. No weapons, no armor, just instinct. 3 challenges. First, the test of mind, a trial of strategy. She was handed a map of 3 bordering territories and a hypothetical crisis. Rogue incursion, dwindling supplies, political tension. Ivy scanned it fast. Reinforce the West. Call for aid from Eastern Ridge under the Truce Pact. Send a diplomatic envoy to Stallrun with supply trade incentives. Secure food and allies. Elders exchanged glances. Varen said nothing. Second, the test of heart, she was given a bound wolf and told to choose, free him and risk a trap, or end the threat now. I won't kill without proof, Ivy said, cutting his bonds. And don't build loyalty with executions. You build it with justice. Third, the test of body, a combat round. She was pitted against Varen's own grandson, Rhys, a seasoned wolf warrior. He didn't hold back, neither did she. Ivy fought with grit. She didn't have claws, but she had rage. She used his size against him, ducking, dodging, landing sharp elbows and heel kicks. He knocked her down once, but she got up. Again. Until he yielded. Breathing hard, blood on her lip, Ivy turned to the elders. And waited. Elder Varen was the last to rise. He studied her for a long moment. Then, with a slow bow of his head, he said, "Oh, you are Luna." The hall erupted. Not in cheers, but in acceptance. A subtle but seismic shift. Elders nodding. Respect earned, not demanded. Naya met her at the steps. "And just made history," she said. Ivy was too tired to grin, but something inside her steadied. This was only the beginning. She found Kael waiting outside, pacing the stone path like a caged storm. The moment he saw her, bloodied but upright, he stopped cold. "You're hurt. I'm Luna." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You shouldn't have had to fight like that." She looked up at him. "Ain't I needed to? They don't follow a mate. They follow a leader." He nodded once, slow. But before they could step back inside, Naya rushed out, face pale. "You need to come, both of you." "Quant is it?" She held up a bloodied cloth. A symbol Ivy didn't recognize, burned into the fabric with a claw mark slashed through the center. "It was left at the northern gate," Naya said. "A rogue message." Kael took the cloth, eyes narrowing. "I know this mark." "What is it?" Ivy asked. Kael looked at her, and for the first time in days, real fear showed in his eyes. "It's a warning from the old order. They've returned." The sky cracked open with thunder by nightfall. Not from a storm, but from the drums. They came from the northern ridge, 3 slow beats, spaced wide apart. Not loud enough to panic the pack, but Ivy heard them in her bones. Kael stood beside her at the overlook, every muscle in his body pulled taut like a drawn bow. His wolf paced just beneath his skin, barely leashed. "This isn't just rogues anymore," Ivy said. Kael didn't answer, because he already knew. Inside the war room, the blood-marked cloth lay stretched across the long oak table, held down with 2 daggers. It stank of smoke and old magic. Kael traced the torn insignia with one fingertip. "'Tis symbol predates the pacts." Naya blinked. "That's not possible." "And 'tis," he said. "They called themselves the Order of the First Blood. Once they ruled the wilds, wolves who didn't believe in balance. They wanted dominance, submission, power at all costs." Ivy stared at the shredded mark. "What happened to them?" Kael's voice dropped. "They were exiled by the earliest alphas, because of the rites they practiced." "Oh, what kind of rites?" she asked. He met her eyes. Then they believed in the claiming of power through death. They killed their own mates to absorb strength. Used Lunas like sacrificial offerings. The room fell silent. Naya whispered, "But they were gone. Destroyed. Some survived," Kael said, "and now they're back. Which means we're not dealing with rogue packs anymore. We're facing a faction that wants to erase what we've built." Ivy's stomach turned. "When they came for me." "Because you're everything they hate," Kael said. "One Luna who stands as equal. One who wasn't born into this but rose anyway. They'll keep coming." "And yes," he said. "And the next time, they won't leave a warning." That night, Ivy returned to the forest alone. She needed clarity, space. The pounding inside her head wasn't fear, it was pressure. Like something was shifting inside her again, something tied to the bond, to the role she'd stepped into, and now. To the enemy she couldn't yet see. The woods were quiet, too quiet. until the scent hit her. Blood. Fresh. She followed it to a clearing, and there, lashed to a tree, was a rogue, or what was left of one. His chest was marked with the same old symbol, carved deep. But across his collarbone, burned by silver, were words Ivy had seen in a book once. Lunas die first. She staggered back. Behind her, Kael crashed through the brush, eyes wild, shirt half-buttoned, fury pouring off him. "I told you not to come alone." And Senhai had to see it. He moved between her and the body, shielding her instinctively. This was a message. To you. "They're baiting me." Yes," Kael said grimly. "'Cause they want to force your hand. They want to draw you into war." Ivy looked up at him and said, "Then let's give them one." By dawn, Ivy stood at the center of Ironclaw's war council, not as Kael's shadow, but at his side. Some elders still questioned her, but after the conclave challenge, none dared to dismiss her. She laid out the facts. These aren't ordinary rogues. They're trained, tactical. Their kills are ritualistic, symbolic. "Penmensi can't risk a full pack war," one elder argued. "What if it's just posturing?" "Then why are they targeting Lunas?" Ivy shot back. "Why brand the bodies? Why leave warnings? Silence. They want to provoke fear, confusion, doubt. If we don't respond, they'll tear us apart from the inside." Kael leaned forward. "When we don't fight them on their terms, we bring the fight to them, with every pack who will stand with us." Murmurs rippled. "Eastern Ridge will answer," Naya said, "when they stand with Ivy." "And what of the Highland packs?" Ivy asked. Kael met her gaze. "They'll follow, if you go to them." Later, in their shared quarters, Ivy unfastened her cloak with slow fingers. She felt Kael behind her, watching. "Don't try to stop me," she said. "I'm not. I need to go to the Highlands. And no. And that means leaving." He stepped in front of her. Only for now. She looked at him, 1,000 thoughts warring behind her eyes. "They're coming for us, Kael. And they won't reach you. So don't know that." "Yes, I do." He cupped her face. "Because I'll burn the world before I let them." She swallowed, then leaned into him. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Then go remind the rest of them what a Luna really is." The journey to the Highlands took 2 days on horseback. Ivy rode with only Naya and 2 guards. No banners, no trumpets. Kael had offered an escort of 10, but she refused. If the Highland Alphas thought she needed a full war party to visit them, they'd see it as a threat. She needed their alliance, not their fear. The land changed quickly as they traveled north. Forests gave way to steep cliffs and narrow paths, the sky always heavy with mist. These were old lands, harsh lands. Wolves here respected only one thing: strength. The gates of Redcliffe keep opened with slow reluctance. Alpha Rogar, broad-shouldered and thickly bearded, met Ivy on the stone steps with crossed arms and narrowed eyes. "You're the Luna of Ironclaw now," he said, as if testing the words. "I am." "And Kael didn't come?" "Then I don't need Kael to speak for me." A flicker of something passed across Rogar's face. Surprise, maybe. Amusement. But not yet respect. "We'll hear what you've come to say," he said, stepping aside. "But understand this, Luna. Highland wolves don't kneel to southern problems." Ivy didn't blink. Then maybe it's time the North remembered that war doesn't care for geography. They gathered that evening, 7 Highland Alphas seated around a fire pit in the keep's ancient hall. Ivy stood alone in the center, Naya at her back. The tension was as thick as the smoke curling from the hearth. "I didn't come here to beg," Ivy said, voice clear. "I came to warn you." Rogar leaned forward. "And about shadows in the woods? Rituals and dead rogues? We've survived worse." "No," Ivy said. "Oh, you haven't." She told them everything. The carved symbols, the mutilated scouts, the burned message. She even laid the cloth on the table, the old order mark glinting under the firelight. "This faction doesn't want territory. They want to erase the Luna bond. They want subjugation. They'll start with me, but they won't stop there," one Alpha snorted. "Oh, why would they come for us?" Because I'm not the only Luna who rose outside tradition, Ivy said. And once they destroy me, they'll use fear to silence the rest. And even if we believed you, Rogar said, what do you propose? And a summit. All the packs, one place, one stand. We bring them out of the shadows. And if they don't come? Say will, Ivy said. Because I'll draw them in myself. That night, as the Highland keep slept, Ivy woke with a start. The air had shifted. She rose from her pallet, slipping through the stone corridors with only her blade at her hip. The scent hit her outside the war room, blood, smoke, and something else, wolfsbane. She burst through the door and found Naya collapsed, barely breathing. A figure cloaked in red hovered over the maps, reaching for the marked cloth. Ivy didn't wait. She tackled the figure hard, slamming them into the stone floor. The hood fell back. It was one of Rogar's own guards. Why? Ivy hissed. But the traitor only laughed, blood on their teeth. You were never meant to rise. The order will see you fall. They bit down, a silver capsule between their teeth. Poison. Dead before Ivy could stop it. The next morning, the mood in the keep had changed. Naya lived, barely. The assassin's body burned at dawn. Rogar stood beside Ivy on the eastern balcony, wind tugging at his cloak. You were right, he said. And the order is already among us. Ivy said nothing. Hell killed to keep the packs divided. Then we unite, Ivy said. We call every Alpha, every Luna, and we stand as one. Rogar turned to her. Do you think you can survive what's coming? Sen, I don't need to survive it, Ivy said. I need to end it. The moon was a silver eye over the valley of Elden Hollow, the sacred ground where, for centuries, the great packs met when war threatened to consume them all. It hadn't been used in over 50 years, until now. Under the moon's gaze, wolves gathered from across the north and south. Caravans rolled in. Armored guards stood at attention. The air thrummed with energy, the scent of fur, steel, and old grudges rising like smoke. Ivy stood at the heart of it all, wrapped in her Luna cloak. Kael at her side. Their bond a steady thrum between them, unbroken, unhidden. We have one shot to pull them together, Ivy murmured to him. Kael glanced at her. Oi, then we don't miss. The great fire in the center of Elden Hollow roared to life as the Alphas arrived. One by one, they took their seats in the circle, iron-marked chairs with the symbols of their packs carved into the stone. Kael opened the summit. Ironclaw called you here not as rulers, but as wolves. His voice cut through the tension like steel. There is a threat moving among us. It does not care for your territories, your bloodlines, or your pacts. It wants one thing, control through fear, domination through blood. He stepped aside, and Ivy took the center. I am not here to rule you, she said. But I am here to tell you the truth. She laid it bare, the rogue attacks, the branded bodies, the assassin in Redcliffe. She revealed the Order's name, their purpose. Their war is not against Ironclaw, it's against every Luna who chooses strength. Every Alpha who believes in partnership, not control. They've hidden in your shadows. I'm asking you to pull them into the light. A heavy silence followed. Then, they've already taken one of mine. Alpha Neris of the Pale Tundra stood. Her mate, her Luna, had vanished weeks ago. She'd believed it to be a rogue ambush. Now her hands shook with fury. Bunay die for what they've done, she said. Others murmured agreement. But not all. Alpha Garen of the Stormveil Pack stood. He was old, respected, had ruled for decades. But something in his gaze chilled Ivy. You speak of unity, he said, voice like gravel. But you forget your place. A Luna shouldn't command Alphas. Ivy straightened. And yet here you are answering my summons. Garen sneered. And you've brought fear, not unity. Chaos, not order. Kael stepped forward. Farron, oh no, the old Alpha snarled. You were stronger before her. Now look at you chasing ghosts. He turned to the others. This summit is a farce, and I will not be led by a Luna whose rise defies tradition. It happened in a blink. Garen drew a blade from beneath his cloak, ancient, silver-edged. and hurled it straight at Ivy. Kael moved faster than thought, his body shielding hers, the blade grazing his arm with a hiss of smoke and blood. Chaos erupted. Guards tackled Garen. Others drew weapons. Wolves howled. Ivy knelt beside Kael, hands pressing to the wound. "Kael? I'm fine," he gritted out. "You're not hurt?" No." Naya appeared at her side. Tat blade, it's ceremonial. It was meant to mark her, not kill. A claim, a sign of resistance. Ivy's stomach turned. "This wasn't just protest," she said. "It was a message. Garen is one of them." They dragged Garen to the fire pit. He laughed as they bound him. "You're too late," he spat at Ivy. "An order has roots in more packs than you can count. You think you've united them, but you've only lit a fuse." Ivy didn't flinch. "Then let them come." Kael wiped the blood from his arm and stepped beside her. Together they faced the circle. "Ironclaw stands ready for war," he said. Ivy raised her voice. "Oh, but we won't fight for power. We'll fight for freedom, if you believe in strength without cruelty, in honor without blood sacrifice. Then stand with us." One by one, the alphas rose. Some slow, some still unsure. But they rose. By the time the moon reached its peak, 30 packs had taken the blood oath, sworn in fire and steel to fight the order, together. But not all. Some slipped away into the night, and Ivy knew the final battle would be fought not only against outsiders, but against the traitors already among them. That night, Ivy stood alone at the edge of Elden Hollow, looking out over the valley. Naya approached, a scroll in hand. "Tince was left in your tent." Ivy opened it slowly. Burned into the parchment was the mark of the order, and a line written in blood: "You took his place. Now you will share his fate." Below it, a single name was scrawled: Alden. Ivy's heart stopped. Her brother. Kael appeared behind her, reading the name over her shoulder. "I thought he died in the fire," she whispered. Kael's voice was hard. "And maybe that's what they wanted you to think." The name Alden echoed in Ivy's mind, like a bell tolling through a graveyard. He had been her older brother, her protector, her first tether to the world of wolves. He had died, or so she'd been told, in the fire that burned their home when she was only 16. A rogue attack, the elders claimed. An accident, a tragedy. But the note left at the summit said otherwise. "You took his place. Now you will share his fate." They hadn't killed him, they had taken him, and now they were using him to tear her down. Ivy stormed through the summit camp, cloak flaring behind her. Kael kept pace at her side, his injured arm bound but his expression sharp, calculating. "I need to speak to Elandra," she said. The name alone carried weight. Elandra was Ironclaw's oldest lore keeper. She'd been present when the fire took Ivy's family. She had tended Ivy's wounds and whispered lies about Alden's ashes. They found the woman inside a canvas tent, lined with herbs and runes. Her hair was long and white, her eyes clouded with time, but when she saw Ivy, her expression tightened. "You remember what you told me after the fire," Ivy said. "And you told me Alden was gone, that his body was burned beyond recognition." "I did," Elandra said carefully. "Why?" The old woman's silence was answer enough. Kael stepped forward. "Tell her the truth, now." Elandra lowered her gaze. "When the order came that night, they didn't want your family, Ivy. They wanted Alden. He had refused their invitation, said no to their blood rights." Ivy's stomach twisted. "And they punished him. Finn, they took him. Alive. Your father tried to stop them. They killed him. Burned your house to cover the tracks. We told you Alden had died to protect you. We thought it was mercy." "Forent ha mercy?" Ivy's voice cracked. "Oh, and you let me mourn ashes that weren't his. You let me carry that grief like a curse." "Ensign was trying to protect you." Kael's voice was ice. "When you failed." That night, Ivy didn't sleep. She stood at the edge of the summit cliffs, staring at the stars, her mind a storm. If Alden was alive, he was either a prisoner of the order, or worse, a convert, a symbol they would use to break her. Kael joined her quietly, the wind tugging at his dark hair. "You're thinking about going to them," he said, "and I don't have a choice." "When there's always a choice. They want me. They've always wanted me. My death would send a message to every Luna who thinks she can rise. But my surrender—" She turned to him. "That's a trap they can't resist. And TV, so if I go willingly, they'll reveal themselves. They'll come for me in the open, and that's when we strike." Kael clenched his jaw. "You're talking about baiting a goddamn war." "No," she said. "I'm ending one." The next morning, Ivy gathered the war council, Naya, Rogar, Neris, the Highland packs who had sworn the blood oath. 30 leaders from across the regions, all standing in a circle of carved stone and snow. "I will ride alone," Ivy said. Chaos erupted. Voices shouting in protest, disbelief, fury. Kael silenced them with a single raised hand. "She's right." Ivy looked at him, startled. "They want her," Kael said. "It'll come if she walks into the trap. But we'll be waiting. We'll track her. Shadow her. When they show themselves, we move. Fast. Hard. No mercy." "And if they kill her before we get there?" Alphaneris asked. Kael looked at Ivy. "And I won't let them." At sunset, Ivy rode alone. No guards, no banners. Just her horse, and the old mark of the order stitched into a black sash across her chest, the only invitation they needed. She rode to the ruins of Wormwood Abbey, the site named in the note. A place long abandoned. A place no sane wolf entered anymore. The wind howled through dead trees. The grass grew in sickly yellow patches. And there, beneath the shattered stone archway, they waited. 5 of them, hooded, still. In the center, a man stepped forward, tall, pale, with eyes that were once the color of summer leaves. Alden. Her breath caught. He was alive, changed. But alive. "And Ivy," he said, voice softer than she remembered. "What have they done to you?" "Since I chose this," he said. "And you don't understand." "Oh no," she said. "And you don't understand." And then, a sound like thunder. Wolves emerging from the tree line, dozens, maybe hundreds. Kael at the front. "Now," he growled. The final battle had begun. The moment the wolves burst from the trees, the order sprang into motion. Cloaked figures unsheathed silver blades, eyes glowing with fury and madness. Their leader, an elder alpha named Thorn, stepped from the shadows, a great crimson mark carved into the flesh of his neck. His aura was suffocating, thick with death and power. "Fools," he hissed. "Sue brought an army into a graveyard." Kael shifted mid-stride, his black wolf rising like a storm as he collided with Thorn in a roar of fury. Claws raked. Fangs met flesh. They tumbled into a whirlwind of snapping jaws and shouts. The duel of alphas underway. Ivy didn't move. She stood locked in place, because her brother stood between her and the battlefield, his expression unreadable. Alden. His eyes flicked over the chaos behind her, then back to her face. "And you should have stayed away. You should have come home." Senti did. His voice cracked, but it wasn't there anymore. He stepped closer. Ivy's heart slammed against her ribs. "And believed they saved me," Alden whispered, "and gave me purpose, a path. And they fed you lies. And no, they gave me what you never could. Faith." The wind howled, scattering ash from the broken abbey stones. Ivy took a step toward him. "Alden, listen to me. You're not too far gone. And you don't understand what they're building," he said. "A future without weak bonds. Without Luna lies. A pack of pure obedience." Ivy's voice turned steel. "Then I'll burn it down." Ivy lunged, not to kill. To reach. She tackled him hard, knocking them both to the moss-covered floor of the abbey. His blade flashed, slicing a shallow cut along her forearm. She gritted her teeth and punched him across the jaw, tears hot behind her eyes. "You were my brother," she shouted. "And you were supposed to protect me." He rolled, pinning her. "And I did." "You abandoned me." "Until," he said, voice ragged. "Tried to save you." She blinked. What? Alden's grip slackened. Just for a moment. They wanted you even then, he said. And the Order saw you as dangerous. You weren't supposed to survive the fire. I let them take me. I thought if I stayed they'd spare you. Ivy's blood ran cold. And you let them take you. For me? His jaw clenched, but I was wrong. They never meant to leave you alone. I should have known. Behind them, wolves fought tooth and claw. Kael was still locked with Thorn, both bleeding heavily, surrounded by fire and howling. Alden looked up at the chaos. They won't stop, not unless you end it. Ivy rose, her blade in hand. And fight with me. He hesitated. Then, he picked up his own. Kael's ribs were cracked, his wolf form staggered with every breath. Thorn was enormous, silver streaks running through his fur like veins of corruption. His fangs had already torn deep into Kael's side, but Kael didn't fall. He couldn't. Not while Ivy fought, not while his pack stood behind him. With a guttural snarl, Kael surged forward. He met Thorn mid-lunge, slamming the older alpha to the ground. Fangs found throat, and this time Kael didn't stop. He ripped. The scream that tore from Thorn's body wasn't human. It was ancient, a soul unbound. When it ended, the Order scattered. Some fled. Others fell to the Ironclaw warriors already waiting to finish what had been started. And Ivy stood in the center of Wormwood Abbey, her blade against the throat of a robed Order zealot. Behind her, Alden fought at her back, cutting down the last loyalists with brutal efficiency. It should have ended there, but then Alden froze. Wait, Ivy turned. A young boy, maybe 12, ran toward them from the shadows of the old chapel. His robes were too big, his eyes so like Alden's. Ivy's heart dropped. Alden, is that my son? Alden breathed. They made me raise him in the Order. Told me he'd replace me if I failed. The boy clung to Alden's leg. He looked at Ivy like she was a monster. And it told him I was the enemy, she whispered. Oh no, Alden said. They told him everyone was. Ivy lowered her blade. It was over. And yet, it would never be simple. The ruins of Wormwood were green again. The summit had become a gathering of peace. Ivy and Kael stood before a stone altar where new alphas were sworn, not by bloodline, but by oath. Alden had vanished after the battle, taking his son and disappearing into the mountains. Ivy didn't follow. She let him go. Some wounds didn't heal in public. They healed in silence, in forgiveness. That night, Ivy stood on the balcony of Ironclaw Keep, the moon bathing her in silver light. Kael came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. Oh, you did it, he murmured. Thung Yun united them. No, Ivy said softly. When we did. And you're not the Luna they wanted, he said. She turned in his arms. I'm the Luna they needed. And when he kissed her, slow, reverent, claiming, it wasn't desperation or fear. It was victory, hard-earned, unbroken, true. 6 months after the battle at Wormwood Abbey, the Ironclaw lands were green again. The long winter had receded, and the trees lining the edge of the territory stood tall and full, their leaves whispering in the wind like they were telling secrets. In the heart of the keep, Ivy sat on the balcony of her chamber. She wore a simple linen dress, her hair braided down her back, the Luna crown resting on the table beside her, forgotten. She didn't need it now. Her power didn't come from the crown anymore. It lived in the quiet, in the laughter of the pups training in the courtyard, in the warm tea in her hands, brewed from the same herbs her mother once grew, and in the steady beat of footsteps approaching behind her. Kael. He hadn't knocked. He never did anymore. His presence entered like breath, familiar, grounding, real. He came to stand behind her, his large hands settling on her shoulders. Warmth bled through her skin at his touch. Council's over? She murmured. Finally, he said, voice deep and rough from the day's dealings. They want to expand the western border. I told them we'd revisit it after the birth. At that, her lips curled. Oh, few make it sound like I'm about to explode. He crouched beside her, one hand sliding to rest on the soft, round swell of her belly. You're glowing, he murmured, like the moon itself lives inside you. She rolled her eyes, but the blush gave her away. You've been reading poetry again. Only the dirty ones. She laughed, and then gasped slightly as their pup kicked beneath her ribs. Kael's eyes widened. Was that, Think she's trying to shift already. His expression softened in a way it rarely did. Vulnerable. Proud. She, he repeated. Insane, I feel like it's a girl. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to her stomach. Whatever she is, she'll be stronger than both of us. Ivy ran her fingers through his hair, dark and a little too long. Since she's already more stubborn. Their eyes met, and in the golden light of dusk, something shifted between them, again, even after everything. After war, betrayal, and healing. The hunger hadn't dimmed. It had simply become something deeper, not a wildfire, but an ember that never cooled. Kael rose slowly, hand still on her stomach, the other sliding along her arm. Ivy stood with him, her breath catching as his fingers trailed up to cup her jaw. Come to bed, he said softly. Her answer was a kiss. Later, in the quiet of their chamber, they didn't rush. There was no need to. Kael laid her down as if she might break, though they both knew how untrue that was. Ivy had faced blades and blood and power-hungry men, but here with him, she could be soft. He undressed her slowly, reverently, his lips following every inch of bare skin. He kissed the stretch of her hips, the curve of her belly, the scar along her side she never told anyone about. And when she gasped at the feel of his mouth on her breast, his hand steadied her, strong and sure. I love you, he whispered, over and over again, like a mantra, a vow. And when he finally sank into her, it wasn't just love, it was worship. They moved together in silence, save for breathless moans and the quiet shift of sheets. He touched her like she was the first star he'd ever seen in the sky. She clung to him like he was the only thing that could ground her through the storm of pleasure. When she cried out, head thrown back, it wasn't just release, it was surrender. To love. To safety. To a future neither of them thought they'd live to see. Kael followed her seconds later, forehead pressed to hers, eyes clenched tight. He held her through the aftershocks, through the shivers, through the quiet stillness that came after. Then he pulled her close and murmured against her hair, I mean it. 1 week later, the baby came in the middle of a spring storm. The wind howled through the keep, thunder shaking the stones, and Ivy screamed with a sound that echoed through the halls like a battle cry. Kael never left her side, not for a moment. He let her break the bones in his hand, let her shout curses and threats and desperate prayers, and then, a cry pierced the storm. Sharp, powerful, alive. Kael's eyes filled as he cradled the tiny pup, swaddled in soft linen. Ivy, soaked in sweat and tears, looked up at him, her smile as exhausted as it was radiant. Is she? She's perfect. He placed their daughter in Ivy's arms. She had Kael's black hair and Ivy's mouth, but her eyes were an amber neither of them had ever seen before, a color born of 2 bloodlines, joined in love, forged in fire. What will we name her? Ivy whispered. Kael stroked his daughter's tiny cheek. Lyra, he said. After the star that never loses its place in the sky, Ivy smiled, and the storm broke into sunlight. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.